Well, Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla on Monday briefed a select group of heads of missions on the planned terrorist attack in Nagrota district in Jammu, which was foiled on the 19th of November. In what will be the first of several briefings to be conducted by the MEA in small groups in view of the pandemic, Shringla explained the implications of the incident on security, diplomacy, and the battle against terrorism. The decision to brief the envoys was taken last week at a security review meeting chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The envoys were provided with a detailed information docket giving the details of the incident as it transpired, as well as a list of items and weapons recovered from the terrorists, clearly indicating their Pakistani origins. The government believes the incident is part of Pakistan's ongoing terror campaign in Jammu and Kashmir. In 2020, there have been 200 incidents of terrorist violence and killing of 199 terrorists. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze how Pakistan has been unmasked again as far as terror is concerned. Joining me on the program today are Sushant Sareen, strategic analyst, Prabhu Dayal, former ambassador, and Major General Ashwini Sivach, retired defense analyst. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. General, I'd like to begin the program with you first. Let's first analyze what happened on November 19th and how our forces foiled the attempt of these terrorists.
Frank, we have to see the picture like this. Today, there are about 300 to 350 terrorists which are sitting on a launch pad, ready to infiltrate inside Indian territory. There are about 100 and 150 terrorists which are only left in Jammu and Kashmir. And if the way our all-out operation is going on, it is not, time is not far off. Within a year and a half or 2 years, we will able to eliminate the complete terrorism from Kashmir Valley. So keeping that in mind, today Pakistan is desperate to send the fresh cadre in Jammu and Kashmir because there is dire need of more cadre as well as the weapon and ammunition. As far as the leadership is also concerned, that also of Lashkar-e-Toba, Jaish-e-Mohammed in North and South Kashmir have been wiped off. So with that aim, they want to pump in a better leadership and more terrorists, but they are unable to do anything in line of control. What is happening is our counter-infiltration grid in line of control is so strong and so robust, they are not able to succeed. Just about a week, 10 days back, they have tried their best of engaging by our post with an even heavy weapon like artillery and mortars so that the terrorists can manage to infiltrate in Indian territory. But that process was not successful. Indian army replied in a very aggressive manner and destroyed about 5 to 6 Pakistani posts, killed about 10 soldiers, and also killed about 70 to 80 the terrorists which were on the launch pad and destroyed their ammunition dump and further. In that contest, now they were unable to do anything on line of control. Their focus shifted to international border. They found it that international border may be easier as on today to infiltrate. The region of LC was also that before the snowfall take place and Shamshabadi is closed due to heavy snowfall, they thought that this window was there for 15 days, but they were unable to do anything. Now, as far as the IB is concerned, there are 2-3 things which are very glaring in IB. IB, especially starting from in the J&K sector, starting from Kathua, Hiranagar, Samba, Jammu, and then going toward Rajouri Poonch. So the IB sector is only a single tier. And second thing is from IB to the National Highway, there is about 7 kilometers. Anyone who crosses the IB and comes on this National Highway can easily get away. And so therefore, they picked up that area. Second thing is, there is only single tier. The density of troops in IB and the surveillance devices are much less than the line of control. Hence, they picked up the IB and they came with an innovative idea, not so innovative. They did it in past also. They made a tunnel, 150 feet, which has come approximately 110 feet inside Indian territory, 110 meters, and they managed to come out. So this is a new challenge to Indian Army that we have to find out a mechanism to able to robustly eliminate terrorists trying to infiltrate even through the IB.
Okay, points taken. We'll talk about what more can the armed forces really do there and how do we innovate as the terrorists innovate too. But Ambassador, let me bring you into the picture now. So India has, taken this issue up, even diplomatically on a war footing, speaking to like-minded nations, telling them about what Pakistan is up to. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Frank, from a diplomatic perspective, I think you have correctly captioned today's program as Pakistan unmasked again, because we have unmasked Pakistan countless times. We have told the international community about the sort of terrorist activities which Pakistan has been engaging against us from time to time without any abatement. Now, let me mention, again from the diplomatic perspective, that amidst all the turbulence which has marked Pakistan's 73-year history, and which has seen civilian governments and military juntas play musical chairs with one another, one aspect that has retained the stamp of permanence has been its unrelenting hostility towards India and its steadfast desire to foment trouble across its eastern border. Now, the inevitable conclusion that can be drawn is that the ill will of the Pakistani establishment for India, especially that of the army, cannot be transformed into goodwill. Whenever Pakistan can create problems for us, it has done so and will continue to do so. And it acts in tandem with China, which is its all-weather friend and ally. Now, let me mention that it was expected that as China would mount pressure along the line of actual control, Pakistan would be up to its usual mischief along our western border. And that is precisely what has happened. There is enough evidence that is available with us and that we have shared with the international community. And I think that international pressure, which has been mounted in recent years in Pakistan, particularly by putting it on the FATF grey list, will continue to be mounted because this rogue nation needs to be brought to the book.
Absolutely. Sushant Sareen, let me bring you in now. As far as what the ambassador is suggesting, let's take that particular aspect forward. Is it a two-pronged approach really as far as China and Pakistan are concerned, one from the east, one from the west? And it's become, the idea is to try and strangulate India.
I think, Frank, there can be no doubt about, that reality which is staring us in the face. And in fact, the armed forces and the security establishment has for the longest been talking about, facing a two-front situation. And frankly, it's now come, it's staring us in the face. One. The thing is that Pakistan is doing what Pakistan has always done. But I think what has happened in, the last 1 week, 10 days, I think is a little more serious than what is being let out, in the public domain. The fact that, the Prime Minister takes a meeting after the Nagrota encounter, I think was significant in its own right. I can't remember when, and there have been innumerable encounters in which terrorists have been killed, and all sorts of things have happened. And yet I can't remember of a single instance when the Prime Minister of the country has felt the need for taking a kind of a security review meeting. So obviously there was more to what happened in Nagrota than meets the eye. And maybe the entire, network of that plot has still not been disclosed in the public domain. That is my assessment, because I don't remember when such a high-level meeting was held. And then following from that high-level meeting, for the government to, apprise the people from, the important countries in the world, India's allies, of what had happened, I think also adds to the significance of that particular action. So clearly something is underway, which we are not entirely aware of. But what is important is, as General Sivach was also talking about, the situation in the valley remains a little fraught. I am not very sanguine about the situation. Yes, we have managed to kill a number of terrorists. Yes, the intelligence and the security grid is functioning quite well. All of that is all very well. The problem, however, is that while we might have, killed and eliminated a number of terrorists, there are new terrorists coming and joining the ranks every day. The one thing which is really going in our favor right now is that after every encounter, we have noticed a dearth of weapons with many of these guys. Sometimes it's just one assault rifle, sometimes it's just a pistol. But the kind of seizures that used to happen in the 90s or even the 2000s are not happening at this point in time. And I think the Pakistani attempt is to push in as many weapons as is possible, to push in as much of assistance as is possible. So that is one aspect of it we need to worry about. The second is the money aspect. And I think, I would have imagined that the NIA needs to do a lot more. But I think whatever the NIA has done to start exposing and cleaning the terror funding networks in Jammu and Kashmir, I think that is also having an impact, that these guys simply do not have the money, the wherewithal to finance their activity. So I think that is the second parameter of success as far as I am concerned. Where we are faltering in Jammu and Kashmir is that we are not able to stem the tide of some young people. Okay, the numbers are not too many, maybe about 100, 150 in a year, which is not such a big deal. But the fact that it's 100 people, I think that's 100 too many.
Right, General, taking the discussion forward, now let me come across to you. Let's go back to a point that you were making and some of the other panelists have hinted at as well. In 2020, we've had 200 incidents of terrorist violence and killing of about 199 terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir. So the situation is really problematic, and clearly Pakistan is not going to stop, and they're going to try some more, and they're going to be even more adventurous and try some new tricks going forward too. So how do we prepare for that? What should our strategy be? How should our armed forces try and be prepared for this?
Frank, we have to have a proactive strategy. As far as the line of control is concerned, we have already adopted a very strong and counter-offensive sort of strategy, wherein what we are doing is, one is that our counter-infiltration grade is multi-tiered. We are very strong on that. Second thing is, we are now basically hurting Pakistan with hurts in maximum. That is the Pakistan army. We know where are the launch pads of the terrorists inside the Pakistan territory. We are picking up those by use of drones as well as the RT fire. And the third thing what we are doing is that in case a Pakistani post which is helping the terrorists to infiltrate inside India with a heavy volume of fire, which called a fire assault, we are punishing those posts in a manner that those posts which have the terrorists to come in, they are completely nullified. So therefore, this proactive strategy on line of control is working quite a while. And in addition to that, our multi-tier in the line of control in hinterland is making sure that maximum terrorists are killed either before they try to come inside the Indian territory or when they are trying to negotiate our counter-infiltration grade. So this is working very well as far as the line of control is concerned. Hence, you'll find about 200 terrorists killed. In fact, if you see last 2 years, it is about 500 terrorists which have been eliminated in the hinterland as well as the line of control, maximum line of control. So the biggest advantage which has happened due to this is the arms and ammunition are not at all coming. And therefore, there is a dire need of arms and ammunition as far as the terrorists are concerned. Hardly any explosive coming. And as far as the NIA is concerned, it is by and large choked that money which was coming through Hawala. So therefore, today, the terrorists are without arms and ammunition, without leadership, and without any resources. That has made a tremendous difference in the valley. But what is happening is, having done a very robust counter-infiltration grade in line of control, they are trying to now explore a possibility and feasibility to infiltrate through the international border. The international border will remain even active in the winters because during winter there is heavy snowfall taking line of control and the Sanchabadi passes closely. Now, as far as infiltration grade in IB is concerned, it is robust, but it is not that robust as is the line of control because this is a single tier. And since the BSF is deployed there, and the gap between IB and the international highway, that is a highway which is going, is only about 7 kilometers. If the terrorists manage to cross that IB and cross that fence, then no one can catch them. And also the OGW as well as the sleeper cell which are working in that area are in coordination with the sleeper cell which are working inside, you can say, valley, and they coordinate their movement from there to there, and hence the truck was seen which was carrying explosive, arms, ammunition, everything. So today what we need to do is we have to change our strategy, make it more counter, you can say a punch has to be given on our counter-infiltration grade on international border. Four or five things need to be done. One is that...
General, we'll come to what more needs to be done a little ahead in the program. I think we've touched upon several of those aspects now. I'd like to take forward a few more aspects too. I'll come back to you. Just sorry to interrupt. Ambassador, let's broaden the scope of the discussion a little bit and bring in another player in the region, of course. Let's talk about everything that has transpired in the United States. There's a change of guard there. New Secretary of State has been picked by the President-elect Joe Biden. There's a sense in Pakistan that this new administration could be a little more friendlier towards Pakistan, and that could lead to some kind of adventurism, really, as far as Pakistan's part is concerned in Jammu and Kashmir. Is that a concern?
Well, you're right. There is a degree of expectation in Pakistan that the Biden administration might be friendlier to them than perhaps Trump was in the beginning. But if you can remember, Trump had also softened to Pakistan considerably. And the reason is that he wanted Pakistan's support to pursue his objectives in Afghanistan. So whether it is the Biden administration or the Trump administration or any other administration, they will go by what they see as American interests on that particular day. They will not be swayed by any other perceptions other than how Pakistan can serve their own interests. Now, how do we rectify this situation? We have already undertaken a very big exercise to brief diplomatic envoys. I'm sure that in the interactions which our government will have with the new US administration at the highest level, we will continue to brief them, as we have done with previous administrations, about how Pakistan continues to foment terrorist activities against India. Now, I'll take off a little point which Mr. Sushant Sareen had made, and that is that something really big was cooking. And while General Savach feels that the arms and ammunitions which were available to the terrorists seem to be drying up, I think the point which Mr. Sareen made has been in a way also highlighted by the Prime Minister, who said that the killing of the 4 alleged terrorists belonging to the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the presence of large cache of weapons and explosives with them indicates that their efforts to wreak major havoc and destruction have once again been thwarted. The fact remains that they were in possession with a large cache of weapons and a huge quantity of explosives. So it's not that their supplies are running out, they're still managing to get things through. And as Mr. Sareen said, something big could have happened, and we perhaps don't know really everything, but some things have been said. For instance, that the anniversary of 26/11 was perhaps being planned. Nagrota has witnessed an earlier attack in 2016 when our armed personnel were attacked by some terrorists. So I think that there was an entire scenario building up which was full of mischief, and there was plenty of ammunition and arms which were available with this bunch of terrorists. I'm glad we have eliminated. But as far as the international community is concerned, we will have to continue mounting pressure on them to treat Pakistan in the manner it deserves to be treated.
Absolutely. Sushant Sareen, let's look at widen the scope a little more from just the Jammu and Kashmir region to Pakistan and then Afghanistan, and look at what is happening geopolitically there as well. And clearly the American forces are going to withdraw from Afghanistan. Is that going to be yet another playground really as far as India and Pakistan are concerned? How do we prep for all of this?
I think, Frank, you've raised too many issues. Number one, I don't think Afghanistan is a playground between India and Pakistan. I think the roles that the two countries have played in Afghanistan are as different as chalk and cheese. India has been involved in developmental activity, capacity building, infrastructure building, and those kind of things in Afghanistan. Pakistan has been involved in sponsoring terrorism, giving safe havens to Afghan terrorists, Taliban terrorists, and all of that. So Pakistan has been actually foisting a war on Afghanistan, while India has been trying to build up the peace in Afghanistan. So I don't think it's been a playground between us, number one. Number two, yes, I think the geopolitics has a link with what has been happening in Jammu and Kashmir. Number one, I think a lot of what is happening, in a sense that the scene shifting from Kashmir down to the IB, is something which will happen routinely. Every year, once the winter starts setting in, the action, at least insofar as infiltration is concerned, shifts substantially to the south towards the international border, where it's relatively easier, partly because there are no snows, partly because there are all those nalas and others from which these people can cross, and partly because once the fog and the mist sets in, it gives them a bit of a natural cover. And of course, then the reasons which General Sivaj mentioned, that once you cross, you reach the highway, then you can get lost very easily. But that's been happening year after year. But I think this year I will not be surprised if we see an extremely hot winter, or at least efforts to have an extremely hot winter in Jammu and Kashmir, because of what the Pakistanis seem to be trying to do. And call it my theory, call it my gut instinct. But I have a sense that what they're going to do is they're going to ramp up violence both in Afghanistan as well as in Kashmir, and then juxtapose the two areas to give some comfort to the new American administration in Afghanistan in exchange for some kind of comfort which the new administration is going to give to Pakistan on Kashmir. I think that is going to be the effort. Whether that will be successful or not, I have my doubts on that. I can imagine the Americans making some noises on human rights and other things, partly because there's been a whole lot of disinformation and misinformation which has been fed into the American system, including by these parachute journalists who come and report from India, as well as a certain section of Indian journalists who have to do virtue signaling to the West, so that they get their fat contracts and they get their assignments with the Western newspapers. But once I think we engage with the Americans at an official level, a lot of the misconceptions which are there in the democratic dispensation, I think we'll be able to address. For example, things like denial of rights to Kashmiris. Nobody can tell me a single right which has been denied to any Kashmiri. In fact, the rights that were denied to people in Jammu and Kashmir have actually been given to them by the constitutional reforms that have been undertaken in Jammu and Kashmir. Right. So I think those misconceptions will have to be cleared up. Secondly, I think that is something which some sensible, sober elements in Pakistan also understand, that Pakistan is not going to get any comfort on what its stand on Jammu and Kashmir is. So the Pakistani game plan is not to talk about their territorial claims on Jammu and Kashmir, or their irredentism on Jammu and Kashmir, but to agitate on the issue of human rights. Now, right. Even that substantially, some of the objections which people had, communication links being cut off, some people, political leaders being put in detention. I think all of those issues are now, past issues. Elections are likely to take place, which is what probably the Pakistanis would want to disrupt, right. And a political process is kicking in. So I think the kind of comfort which they are expecting in Jammu and Kashmir, they are not going to get. How that then plays out in Afghanistan remains to be seen. But I also suspect that the Americans are not going to be very, well disposed towards the Pakistanis if they continue to play their old games with the Americans. Something which they'd done when Biden was in government the last time in up to 2016.
All right, then time to get quick closing comments from all my panelists with the best way forward. General, go ahead, starting first with you.
As far as India is concerned, now we have to have a multi-pronged strategy. See, Pakistan today is a very cornered. Pakistan very cleverly, Imran Khan government has failed in all respect. And somewhere they want to divert the attention of the public. And that is how this basically Pakistan democratic movement is becoming very popular there. And Gilgit-Baltistan, which have made the fifth province, and the election has been taken place, are very fraud. People have come in the street. And somehow Pakistan government will try to divert the mind of the people of Pakistan by trying to create problem in Jammu and Kashmir rather than looking after their own self. Because the government of Imran Khan has failed in all respects. As far as India is concerned, we should be very well prepared for a very hot winter, and especially as far as infiltration, both in line of control and international border are concerned. And Pakistan is going to make use of drones in a big way, because drone is the best way to send the weapons, and we have new technology has to be developed. How can we identify drones, because they are too small, which gives a very small signature on the radar. Overall, we should be very alert and alive in this winter. It is going to be very crucial for counter infiltration great in Jammu and Kashmir.
Ambassador.
Well, to me, the dirty game which is being played by China along with Pakistan is a cause of worry. These two countries do not view us in a friendly manner at all. They work in cahoots, and their a common intention is to harm India. So the fact of the matter is that with the Chinese amassed at the line of actual control, the Pakistanis up to mischief, no matter what position Biden takes and the new administration adopts, we have to be on guard, because we have to deal with this twin menace of China and Pakistan on our own.
All right. And Sushant Sareen, quick closing concluding remark from you.
Frank, I'll be very quick. I agree with both my distinguished colleagues. Nothing more I can add to what they've said.
Okay, all right. On that note, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective. For us, what's coming out of this discussion is that the PM himself had a security review meeting after the Nagrota incident. That itself suggests how serious the matter was and how serious it could have been